Alternate history is perhaps one of the most fascinating genres of fiction out there. It takes an already existing and well-documented narrative, uses it as a blueprint, and expands on the what-ifs of the story. The setting and time of the story become constraints for the author that highlights even more just how well they can mold a piece into their own while still retaining a basis on events long past. In Assassin's Creed 2, the historical Bonfire of the Vanities is caused by a precursor race artifact capable of mind control. In We Happy Few, history is altered as Franklin D. Roosevelt is successfully assassinated, leading to a butterfly effect to the game's events. Even games like the Civilization series reference real-life events to further aid their narrative. At the center of each alt history is a deep respect for past events, their chroniclers, and the people that made them happen. There are so many different ways to channel that respect into the medium of gaming, and I believe one of the best ways to showcase that is to present just how deeply entrenched and well researched the game is in its historical references and factoids, with a new one to be found in each corner if you simply squint hard enough. Taking place over several eras in the 20th century, I believe Reverse 1999 is a prime example of this, and they do it really goddamn well. Hello there everyone, my name is Redshifted, and over the past few months, I've been running a daily fun fact series about Reverse 1999 over on Twitter. It has been pretty fun, listing out all of the facts I can get from the game, from the historically accurate, to the literary, to the obscure, to the rather weird. And by now, I have amassed a large collection of facts. In fact, this video is scheduled to be released as fact number 100. So, to commemorate this special occasion as well as the second anniversary of one of my favorite games of all time, I have compiled 10 of my favorite fun facts from the series and expanded upon them. I will be explaining them all in more detail that wasn't previously possible. I hope you enjoy them and find an aspect of the game to love even more. Once again, happy second year anniversary to Reverse. Let's begin right where it all started. As many of you might know, the names of each main story chapter references literature, but so far, there's only been 2 exceptions to this rule, Chapter 7.5 and our topic for this first fact, the prologue. The story menu doesn't display it, but the prologue section does in fact have a name. It is visible right when you check the Atlas menu. This is Tomorrow. Rather than a book, This Is Tomorrow is the name of an art exhibition held in August 1956 in the Whitechapel Art Gallery, London. In this exhibit, artists from different backgrounds were given 2 years to share their vision for the future of contemporary art. This Is Tomorrow was highly notable for the time for being one of the forerunners of the British pop art movement. Many different perspectives were formed during this art exhibit, but without a doubt, one of the most popular of them all comes from the second group, consisting of Richard Hamilton, John McHale, and John Volcker. In their exhibit, they used a mishmash of seemingly unrelated and different aspects, from cutouts to models, that all come together in a seamless manner. Just like in the piece, Just What Is It That Makes Today's Home So Different, So Appealing by Hamilton. To summarize, the art exhibition became the first manifestation of pop art anywhere in the world. Its ripples extended through the art world, leading to what we now know as contemporary art. As for the game, the storm of 1966 is filled with references to pop art and culture. In this image alone, many references can be found, like from the bodybuilder and his pop-up sign, the young romance poster, the tape recorder right in front. In fact, Richard Hamilton was even name dropped. Naming the prologue chapter This Is Tomorrow is not only fitting for a game about time travel, but also fits the era. Plus, it shows clear respect and admiration for the artists of the past. An aspect of Reverse 1999 I am extremely happy remains constant to this day. In fact, they show their love for artists everywhere in this game, even in the UI elements that you interact with each time you play. You might not have noticed it before, but below every single garment, there is a certain quote. It reads, "You can have anything you want in life, if you dress for it." This is a quote from Edith Head, a no doubt extraordinary woman from history. Edith Claire Head was an American film costume designer with a career span from 1924 to 1981. These years are highly notable as Hollywood began and ended its golden age and as films transitioned from black and white to color. During these years, Head became heavily familiar with the film industry, working in large production companies like Paramount and Universal Pictures. With her work, she got in contact with virtually every top female star in Hollywood at the time. Nowadays, she is widely considered one of the most influential costume designers in film history. She has been nominated for an Academy Award for Best Costume Design a total number of 35 times throughout her career and won 8 of them. This makes her the most nominated woman as well as the most awarded woman in the Academy's history. I think Edith Head's quote is highly fitting to be below every single garment. Costume and character design remain to be fundamentals in creating media, whether they are in films or in games. And it's amazing to see how one's work influences and is referenced in something completely different and decades apart. Oh, and bonus fun fact, if her look is somewhat familiar, this is because her appearance, personality, and voice were used as a basis for another character, Edna Mode, from the 2004 film The Incredibles. We took a bit of a detour with this fact, but I hope you understand how filled with references this game truly is. Now, let's head back to the prologue chapter, because despite it being only 15 minutes long, it still has a few more things to share with us. The suitcase is locked with an incantation. In the prologue, Vertin recites it for us when opening the suitcase to let Regulus in. I can't exactly pronounce it, so let's have Vertin repeat it for us.
Say this with me. Me ilu milde en dion bona nocton. Hold my hand. Let me take you into the suitcase.
This incantation is in another language, Esperanto. In reverse, Esperanto is a whole can of worms to open on its own, so for now let's simply translate it. Putting it in English, we get this. Do not go gentle into that good night. Another literary reference. Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night is a poem by Welsh poet Dylan Thomas, first published in 1951. It is in a style of a villanelle, 4 stanzas of 3 before a final stanza of 4. In the interest of time, I'll only read to you the first and last stanzas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless, me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Rage, rage against the dying of the light, and do not go gentle into that good night are lines that are repeated constantly in this poem. From them alone, it's pretty clear what the piece is trying to impart. It is resistance. It is a plea to actively resist the temptation of dying and to keep going, to continue living. Though the message is rather simple, I think that it's most fitting to be the code word for the suitcase. An arc, a symbol of continued survival, a chance to keep on living beyond the tragedy of the future, and a symbol of Vertin's determination to continue, no matter how harsh the storm may be. 1929. It was an extremely eventful year in history, and in our time is ripe full of references to those events, like the Valentine's Day Massacre and the stock market crash. However, if you played this game long enough, you're probably already familiar with all of them. So, let's talk about something a little more niche. In Node 7 Scorched Woods, we follow Burton, Sonetto, and Apple as they traverse through some scorched woods, of course. This is when our timekeeper decided to be a little silly. I'll play the clip.
Looks like it has been through a huge fire. Well, if it were not the path we must take, I really don't want to enter these woods. Speaking of which, Sonetto, have you ever heard of a ghost story about fire? No, never. Oh. So it is said that in the early 20th century, there was a devastating forest fire in Washington. Those who died unfortunately didn't want to leave, and they turned into dark ghosts in the woods.
The ghost part is difficult to decipher since there's a lot of US ghost stories, so for now, let's focus on the historical aspect of the story, the fire. And wildfires are unfortunately a rather common occurrence in the United States, with millions of acres of forest being burned down each year. These cumulative numbers, however, cannot compare to one of the worst fires in US history, the one that Burton is specifically referring to. In August of 1910, a large flame enveloped the forests of Idaho, Montana, and Washington in an event that is aptly called the Great Fire of 1910, or simply, the Big Burn. In just 2 days, an estimated 3 million acres of forest was quickly burned down, with several towns in the vicinity completely wiped off the map. To compare, 2025 SoCal wildfires happened over the course of 24 days that only burned 50,000 acres. Even without comparison, however, both were dreadful disasters that affected many. In the end, 87 deaths were recorded and the fires were eventually extinguished upon the arrival of cold winds. Following it, many discussions were held in order to prevent it from happening again, from funding the US Forest Service to enacting preventive measures like the Weeks Act and the 10 a.m. policy. What once was one of the worst fire disasters also became the largest contributor to improvements to fire safety. Which, if you think about it, is rather ironic seeing the situation in Chicago, where a firefighter himself caused the fire. Hope Druvis is doing well. Balloon Party has been one of the most enigmatic characters ever since launch. Her demeanor, her speech, her appearance, all of it screamed creepy. Yet beneath all of that creepiness is a heart of gold and a really fun reference to uncover. For this, let's go back in time and discuss the early history of antibiotics. In the early 1930s, medicine was still slowly but surely being researched. It was a time where minor infections and injuries can quickly spiral in severity or even death. Such was the case with streptococcus. Streptococcal infections cover a wide variety of symptoms, from basic sore throat to life-threatening conditions. And at the time, there was still zero cure for it. There was, however, a common solution for the infected done as a last resort: surgical amputation of the infected limb. Enter Hildegard, 7 years old. It was 1935 and she was making Christmas decorations for the family when she suddenly got injured. This injury quickly developed into a fever and a severe inflammation on the wrist. Streptococcal infection. A suggestion was made to amputate, but thankfully, Hildegard's father was Gerard Domach, one of the most notable bacteriologists in history. In fact, Domach's research was on streptococcal infections. Wishing not to lose her arm, Gerard administered a new compound and cured her condition. Eventually, this drug was widely produced and named Brontosil, the first ever commercially available antibiotic. But really, what does this have to do with Balloon Party? Well, everything. Balloon Party is an entire reference to the Domachs. Her first item is literally called Domach's candy. Meanwhile, her balloons are similar in shape to Streptococcus bacteria, being a chain of spheres or oblongs sometimes referred to as balloons. Plus, Balloon Party coughs them out, the same way the Streptococcus transmits. Finally, Balloon Party's first story parallels the events of Hildegard, a 7-year-old suddenly coughing and getting an inflammation. As we can see, Reverse's character design often have an aspect of history embedded deep into them, with most being a historical counterpart like with the case of Balloon Party. For others though, respect is still shown by ensuring that their appearance tells us who they are, what era they're from, and what role they play. This is especially the case with our next character, Kakanya. Kanya's clothes are very fascinating and fit extremely well with the style of her era. I could go on and on about its fabric or its shape, but today I want to discuss the history and the implications of one aspect in particular. I'm talking about the color, green. For centuries, green has been extremely hard to create a pigment for. It wasn't until the introduction of synthetic dyes that vibrant tints of green finally hit the market. Kanya's clothes in particular have a very interesting shade. This is Paris green and Sheila's green, two colors that come pretty close to what Kakanya is wearing. Both of these colors were widely used in the 19th century in many applications. There's one small issue though. They're both very toxic. Paris and Sheila's green both contain arsenic, a very toxic element at high concentrations and prolonged exposure. In fact, while used as dyes, they were also used as pesticide, insecticide, and rat killers. And soon enough, the use and production were thankfully banned, being cited as too toxic and causing too many factory poisonings. By then, Paris green was labeled as the first insecticide of the world. So how does that relate back to Kakanya? Well, try to remember Isolde's story for a moment, and if you didn't read it, I will be narrating a section here for you. Theophil's funeral is over. More than half the servants have been let go. Miss Deerstoff says she needs some time alone and refuses any visitors. Isolde crosses the living room, walking straight to the sideboard. She opens the drawer and takes out a metal box of arsenic powder. She carries the box over to the tea table and places the box on it. Be grateful, be self-restrained, be kind to others. She tilts the teapot and watches the tea flow to the cup. Be compassionate, especially towards the less privileged. Isolde drops her eyes. The arsenic powder dissolves into the hot tea as if it had never existed. She raises the teacup and slightly lowers her head. We must be virtuous and dignified as befits our status, Theophil. In the teacup, her charred butter gazes at her sorrowfully. Ah, how careless I am. I almost forgot the date today. She raises her head and throws the teacup over her shoulder, splashing her brother's face on the floor. She picks up her coat from the hanger and walks towards the porch, muttering to herself, "My new doctor, my Kakanya, Dr. Kakanya." Isolde almost commits suicide by taking a lethal dose of arsenic. She stops herself from doing so because of the thought of Kakanya. This is extremely fascinating to me. There are so many ways to interpret the scene with this new knowledge. Isolde might not have killed herself there, but she remained ingesting arsenic. Kakanya was a reprieve, not a cure. It might have also been the nature of Kakanya and Isolde's relationship being inherently toxic, one between the doctor and a patient. Regardless of interpretation, however, I think the choice of putting Kakanya in green by the developers, intentional or not, was an extremely brilliant decision. Oh, and speaking of our dear opera singer, this next fact's for her. Isolde is one of the most fascinating characters in Reverse 1999. There's just so much depth to her character, her backstory and beliefs that it would take ages to analyze. For now, I just wanted to focus on this image. This frame comes from her character story, and I think it reiterates but makes a deeper cut into Isolde's tragedy. In this scene, Isolde is performing Salome, a one-act opera by Richard Strauss, and is playing the titular character. Particularly, she is performing the Dance of the Seven Veils, the play's most famous section, and likely the one that audiences wanted to see the most. Let's get into some history. In the early 20th century, there was a cultural phenomenon called Salomania. From the name, it was an obsession towards Salome and the Dance of the Seven Veils. But what is this dance really? In the climax of Salome, she dances in front of King Herod to get a wish. Though in the original story, the dance was non-sensual, Strauss took it differently. Instead, the dance became an unveiling, the 7 veils becoming literal 7 articles of clothing that the performer removes. It was turned into an erotic display or even a striptease. Eventually, Salome became a competition, with each performer one-upping the eroticism for audience impact. Now, with all of this information in mind, let's bring it back to reverse and let's finally reframe this scene. This is not a picture of empowerment, not a Salome about to get her wish, but a bird in a cage. This is a 16-year-old, still grieving, still at a complete loss from losing both her parents and without anyone to confide in. And yet, she performs. She performs an erotic display, baring herself to the whole of Vienna because that is what she believes she must do. She strips for the audience's entertainment and her own suffering, as they mock her for her seance performance. Isolde's story is a tragedy. We have seen how her parents, Theo, failed the whole of Vienna, and even Clara failed her. This is yet another aspect that adds to the reason why Isolde became the way she is. And taking it all into account, the events of Vienna almost feel like an inevitability. Jeez. Let's move to something a little more heartwarming actually. Let's see here. There we go. Found one. This is Pioneer, an awakened store mannequin introduced in version 2.0. And as you might expect, he is exceptionally fashionable. Let's take a look at his fit. Like most characters, he has 3 items, but let's focus on these 2. Olive King coat and Rosewood King. In both of these items, a clothing store is mentioned. Gecko and Flusser. It's time to meet our second clothing designer for the day. This is Alan J. Flusser, American novelist and men's clothing designer. Today, he has his own company, but many argue that his greatest influence in fashion is his role in the reintroduction of a certain style back in the 80s. If you have seen films like Barbarians at the Gate, Scent of a Woman, or most notably American Psycho, you might notice a heavy reliance on business clothing, such as suit jackets, button-up shirts, and a general semi-formal attire. In all of these films, Flusser worked on the wardrobe, heavily promoting this attire of male clothing that originated from the 30s. Though adopted, some creative liberties were taken, such as the addition of suspenders that created the business aesthetic of the 80s. This style is reflected on Pioneer's clothes, but there is a character even closer in appearance. Enter the second half of Gecko and Flusser, Gordon Gekko. Gordon Gekko is a character from the 1987 film Wall Street, performed by Michael Douglas. And like before, Gekko's entire wardrobe was designed and fitted by Alan Flusser. As we can see, Pioneer adapts some aspects of Gekko's outfit, from the suspenders to the general semi-formal look. Plus, like Gekko, Pioneer is a financier, though maybe not as greedy as him. Let's head back and revisit the main story one last time. Near the end of chapter 8, we come across this stage. 822, the Roaring Forties. Summer ends here, the ICC begins. In this story stage, we follow a perspective in Ushuaia, Tierra del Fuego, looking onto Antarctica in the horizon. From first glance, many would assume that from a name like the Roaring Forties, it is referring to the decade of the 40s. Unfortunately, this couldn't be the case. Unlike the Roaring 20s or the Swinging 60s, the 40s doesn't even get a prefix in our history books. Instead, it refers to a completely different measure: latitude. As many of us might know, latitude is the measure of how far one is from the equator, whether northward or southward. Latitude is also essential in determining the climate of the region. We're most familiar with the world being split into the tropics, the temperate, and the frigid zones. However, beyond those basic classifications, the latitude also affects one more thing we'll be talking about: the wind. Right between latitudes 40 degrees and 50 degrees south, there exist strong westerly winds, notable that they have their own name: the Roaring Forties. These are notably stronger than most winds due to the warm air of the equator, the Coriolis effect, and the lack of proper land masses to disperse them. Going closer to the South Pole, the winds grow even stronger, creating the harsh currents the Southern Ocean is currently known for. Back to reverse. Funnily enough, Ushuaia is not covered by the Roaring Forties. The Tierra del Fuego province lies beyond the 50 degrees south latitude, and as such, it is covered by stronger winds by another name, the Furious 50s. Going even further down to latitude 60, and we meet the winds of Antarctica, the Screaming 60s. And finally, for this last fact, I want to end it with a personal favorite of mine. This is Loggerhead, one of my most beloved characters from the game. She is an awakened Latham loop, a loop used in filming that allows for continuous shots. But we're not here today to talk about the Latham loop or its history. We're here to talk about this specific voice line from Loggerhead.
I have a recording from a time when the lamps went dark and bonfires were fed with scrap and old newspapers. People in threadbare coats gathered around the flames, drinking their blues away and singing Daisy Bell. I remember. It goes, Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer due.
Daisy Bell, a piece made by Harry Dacre back in 1892. It is no doubt a historical song. If you're somewhat familiar with electronics or voice synthesization, then you know exactly how amazing it is that a piece of technology like Loggerhead sings it. In 1961, inside the Bell Labs in New Jersey, an experiment was being done in speech synthesis. An IBM 7094 was programmed to do one simple task: to sing. The song chosen for the occasion? Daisy Bell. Let's listen to a bit of history.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage, I can't afford a carriage. But you look sweet upon the feet of a bicycle built for two.
And that was the first time a computer has ever sung. This event was made by a collaboration of different people. The IBM was programmed by John Larry Kelly Jr., Carol Lockbam, and Lou Gersman, while the accompanying instrumental was by Max Matthews. For me, this is when computers truly began to feel more personal. Hearing them sing made them feel more alive, like they have finally found their own voice. In fact, most chatbots like Siri or Cortana will reference the song if you ask them to sing. Similarly, we have a piece of technology in our hands, Loggerhead, an awakened. Loggerhead is extremely mechanical, more machine than human. Her head is a camera and her skin is solid metal. She forgets things a lot and uses reels to remember. And yet, she still recalls this one song that represents a collaborative effort to make the machine live. And from how she expressed herself in version 2.5, from the emotion she felt from worry to grief, I think that she is just as alive as that IBM from 1961. And I think that that's pretty damn cool. And at the end of the day, that's what this video really is all about. You don't have to know about the winds of the Southern Hemisphere or a historical fire in the US to appreciate the story, but knowing about it is cool. At the other end of the spectrum, the developers did not need to put Edith Head's name in the garment screen or have an entire character be based off of Shuttlecock's, and yet they did, because it's cool. And this attention to detail is one of the many things that made me fall in love with the game. Reverse 1999 is something special, to me and in general. The game oozes with passion and respect for the past that, with the second year anniversary, I can only look forward to the future. And by then, I hope to still be seeing niche facts and references to share with everyone. I hope I managed to express my passion for the game through this video and that you all enjoyed seeing it. Once again, happy 2 years, and may the peace be with us, fellow timekeepers.